Hello, Judy.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. Things are good.
Well, it's a Thursday, and we get to talk about one of my favorite subjects today, and that's creativity. And we have three incredible people who have their own solo shows that we're going to talk about today and their process and how that all came together. But before we begin, I want to ask how you've been and if there's anything that you've seen recently that you highly recommend to everybody.
Well, one thing that I did recently that was really interesting for me was I gave a talk about my life to a group of people, and like 80 people showed up. I was shocked.
So what surprised you the most about putting this talk together?
How difficult it was for me to be, totally forthcoming and yet candid about all the things I've done in my life, but also do it in a way, presenting in a way where it didn't sound like I was bragging. I was just telling them, my experiences, but I didn't want it to come across as being, all about me, even though it was all about me.
Well, I'm sure that all of our guests will agree with it, with what I'm going to say about this. First of all, whether it's 80 people or whether it's 800 people, those people made a commitment to be there for you, and they want to hear your story. And I don't think there's anything braggadocious about coming out and telling the story that you've been asked to tell.
That's true. And I was surprised that many people wanted to know the story of my life. But, having been in the media for so many years, and most people haven't. So I think that's, just that alone is really interesting to a lot of people, because you come in contact with so many interesting people. And that's really what I talked about, was the people that I, been in contact with over my life. And the impact they've had on me both personally and professionally. So
that's great. Well, we're going to jump in, but I'm going to ask a question of you, but actually it's a mystery question. So there are two columns today, A or B. So you pull one and we'll see what your question is.
Being a bloom, I'll say B.
And let me pull this up here. And it says, would you rather give up your smartphone or your computer?
Yeah, a lot, I've heard that one before, and I think I'd give up. Well, you can pretty much do anything with either, but probably give up the computer, because a smartphone is a computer, right? You can do anything you can do on a computer, you can actually do on your phone, but you can't carry your computer around with you all day.
That's true. Although we practically do with our phones nowadays, and they're getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I mean, I'm talking about in terms of the apps that we put on it. And so many people are so reliant on their phones right now. As I mentioned earlier, and I'll give a little plug here. We're going to talk about this a little later, but I'm doing my show in Santa Monica at Santa Monica Playhouse. Thank you, Barbara Minkus. But she was responsible for opening the door for me there. And I got the most incredible email from them yesterday. And they said they wanted to thank me for my professionalism, that I actually respond to every email, even if it's just to say, I got this. Thank you. I'll look over this. Right. Just the acknowledgement. And I don't know about you, but I find that sending out pitches for the show and trying to get things done and on track, it's not always easy to get people to respond to you. Yeah. And I understand, I respect that they're overwhelmed and everything, but it takes just a few seconds to say, I got this, I'll look over this, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah, and it comes across as kind of rude, I think, when people don't respond, at least to say, great, got it. That's it.
Well, there's one thing that each and every one of us, I don't care who you are, what your level is, where you are in the business, we all want to be acknowledged. And that's what it's about. And I want to acknowledge our first guest today. I'm going to bring on Jenn Bornstein. And I saw her show at Don't Tell Mama. I want to make sure that I get the title right. Diary of a Pizza Bagel's Daughter.
That's correct. He's the pizza bagel. I've got other stuff mixed in other than the pizza and the bagel.
I want to tell you, it was one of the best crafted shows. and you had pulled all the elements together. As Judy just said, doing a talk about herself, it's a daunting thing. But you did this with your show, not only telling the story, but putting songs to it. So that's another level, Judy. So tell us how this show came to be.
Sure. So I've lived in the city for 8 years, and I did some theater for a group called Afterwork Theater, which it's kind of like a community theater in the city. And I've always wanted to do a cabaret. So I did a Google search trying to find cabaret classes because I'm the type of person who likes to dip my toe in before I jump into the pool. And I found the Singnasium classes, and then I also found the 92nd Street Y classes. And I was making a decision about which ones to do. And I decided on Singnasium because they listed the piano player as a music director, whereas 92nd Street Y listed theirs as just a pianist. And I'm like, I want a music director. And I took a cab lab class with Lenny. And that was where the journey started. Yeah, Lenny Watts. That's where their journey started, learning how different cabaret is than musical theater, how much more intimate, how it's more conversational. I can be a little loud, and I had to learn how to, as Lenny says to me often, put the lid on the pot. So I just, I had to learn.
I will say those notes that you hit are incredible.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. But I don't want to blow. He would talk to me about, you want people to lean in. You don't want people to lean back because you're overwhelming them. And those were things that I had to learn. And I took a couple classes with him, and I had known I wanted to do a story about my father who had passed away during the pandemic. He didn't get a good send-off, and I wanted to give him one. So this is where that started. And it was like a mix of, how do I bring together his music and my music? How do I tell his story? But also I'm the one on stage, so I have to make sure I'm interweaving it with stories about myself. And Lenny really helped me learn the art and the craft of cabaret. So I will say that's kind of how it started. And we went up for the first time in January. It was terribly overwhelming and daunting, but I'm very proud of what I did. And I know my dad would be hugely proud. And I know he's there having a great time hearing people laugh at all of his crazy antics.
Well, it's incredible. But, I was reading your bio, and you were the assistant to a friend of mine. And Angelo Del Rossi.
Angelo, yes.
This is the story of my life. In the past, I'm changing this trajectory. But I will meet people, and he'd go, why didn't I meet you when I was the artistic director of the Paper Mill Playhouse? And I said, that's what I want to know. I loved Angelo so much. And when I saw that, it just jumped out at me.
He was just a wonderfully kind, classy as all get out guy. And that was my first theater job, Paper Mill Playhouse, as the assistant to producers. Both Angelo and then Roy Miller he was the producer behind Drowsy Chaperone. Mm-hmm. So that was a great introductory experience for me. I was there when they did Stephen Schwartz's Children of Eden, the one with Stephanie Mills. And yes. So obviously being able to just walk into the theater anytime I want and watch and observe on weekends was just a huge honor and a great learning experience.
So Jenn, explain what is the pizza bagel all about?
Pizza bagel. So my father's mother was Italian Catholic, and my grandfather was a Romanian Ukrainian Jew. And so and this mix of sort of nationalities, and often I joke about even languages, like I didn't even realize until I was older that some of the words that were used in the house, some were Yiddish, some were Italian, and I never knew the difference. I just thought everyone's house was like that.
I want to, something that you just said that just jumped out at me, and I love, first of all, that you took the time to look at these various classes that were available to you here in New York, but it was the semantics of the wording of the musical director that you said, this is what I want because I want a director. When I started in cabaret, before I even ventured to put my first show together, I spent 3 months going to see every show that I could possibly afford to go see. And the one thing that I would find out was who was the director that was directing most of the shows. And this is going back to before you were born, Jen, I think. But this was in the early 90s. And then finding out who were the creative people that I really wanted to work with. And uh, and I also love the fact that you said that at the Paper Mill Playhouse, to be able to go into the space and observe what was going on. Because I think that that's an aspect of the business that so many people miss out on. This morning I was watching um, Wayne Brady, who's going to be playing in the Wizard of Oz, the Wiz on Broadway. He's going to be playing the Wizard, and he said that he remembers as a little boy seeing the movie, saying, "That's what I want to do. That's what I want to be a part of." And now that the opportunity has come his way, he said, but he's done, to quote him, he's worked his ass off to get to this point. And a lot of people, I think they want instant gratification. They want success to happen right away, and they're not willing to do the legwork that it takes to get there. So God bless you for everything, because the show is just wonderful.
Thank you. I love watching and learning. Lenny's, I joined the board of Signasium this year, so that's been
Good.
very exciting. And we actually just got the rights to Jesus Christ Superstar for the fall, and we're going to sort of do a concert version. And the first thing I asked him was, could I assistant direct? Because I would like to watch him work.
Good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to bring on John Fisher. John, I hope if you're ready to come on, make sure that your camera is on, because I can see just his name in the wings. I hope I'm going to be able to bring him on. But like I did with Judy, there are two columns, column A or column B, and you get a mystery question. So we'll learn something new about you.
Okay.
So A or B?
B.
And your question is, would you rather be slightly late or super early?
I would like to be super early, but I would say that's probably not going to happen. I would love to be one of those people who gets there early and, is all settled and calm by the time whatever it is that I'm there for has started. But I tend to leave right on time. Most of the time I'm on time, but then there's the, subways, it's the city. So theoretically, love to be early, but reality is I'm either going to be on time or a little bit late.
I want to give a shout out to a dear friend of mine. She's been on the show, Judy, Sarah Rice. I don't know if you recall, but Sarah Rice recently passed away. And she was notoriously late for everything. We had a Thanksgiving dinner here once, and we waited almost an hour and a half.
Oh, no.
And then finally, I said to the rest of the guests, we're going to sit down and hope that she makes it. And then she came waltzing through the door. And they even started the memorial on Tuesday night late, because as an homage to her. And I loved it. So let's see if John Fisher is... John?
Yeah.
Your camera's not working.
My camera's not working.
Yes.
Oh, well. Let me try a different way. I can come in a different way.
Yeah. Like I said, if you reboot your computer, start again, that may work. In the meantime, I'm going to take you off camera, and so to speak, and then I'm going to bring Barbara Minkus on. Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
Good luck. And there she is, Barbara Minkus. Barbara Minkus has been on the show before. And Barbara Minkus not only is one of my favorite entertainers, she is also one of my favorite people on the planet. And Barbara was in town last summer, and Danny and we all went to dinner, and she had a dream of a theater that she wanted to work in. And in the pouring rain, Danny and I took her to the theater, and God bless the janitor on duty. He let us in to look at the space. She stood on the stage and she said, "This is it. This is where I need to be." And lo and behold, she made it happen. And I'm saying this because she returned the favor for me. Because last week, when I was in a desperate situation of finding the right space, Barbara Minkus made some calls and got me the theater. And I'm thrilled. And Barbara, and she even flew to New York for my show in February. So thank you, Barbara. But I want to make this about you.
About all of us.
Yes, but we've been talking about the process
Mhm.
of putting. You've put your own show on the stage, your 18 Minutes of Fame. You can explain to those who have not seen your show what that 18 Minutes of Fame means, and then I'd like you to address Judy about her concerns about whether people would be interested to hear your story or not.
Okay, well, first of all, I'm thrilled to be with you, Richard, and all of you. And I'm so happy it worked out, Richard. Warms my heart. And I will be there. I will be there with my husband to see you. And you'll love the people that run the theater there.
Oh, I do already.
Okay, so the journey about 18 Minutes of Fame is that the short version is that I had done a benefit for St. Mark's Church in Los Angeles, Glendale, and I liked the musical director. So I get what you're saying, Jen. If you have a rapport with someone, I met the musical director because he was playing from another show, and all I did was watch him and not the show. So I knew we were destined to be together. His name is Ron Barnett. So Ron said, would you like to do a benefit for St. Mark's Church? Obviously, I am not a St. Mark's Church member, but I said, sure, it's for getting new choir robes. So I did this show that I thought was going to be terrific. And the following week, I went to New York. And Arnold Margolin, who was the producer of Love American Style that I was on for 6 years, now lives in New York. And he came to the concert. He was in LA then. And I met him for lunch. And of course, I thought he was going to say how great I was. Not. He said, Barbara, he started out by saying, Barbara, there are a lot of singers that are just as good as you are. And you understand, older singers. It's 2 down. So I said, yeah. I got a little chills and maybe a little instant diarrhea coming on. He said, but Barbara, I don't know anyone that can tell a story the way you do. And I just need you to know that is where you need to focus. You need to write a show. I have the perfect person for you to write it with in LA. And I had already known who that person was because she directed me in Saturday Night at Grossinger's about Jenny Grossinger. Her name is Susan Morgenstern. And he said, you and Susan should write a show and call it I'm Not Famous. That was the first title. And so I said, okay. So I go back to LA and Susan and I start working and I start telling her all my stories because lots of stories. And she said, oh, we're going to put this together. And I contacted my friends at the Santa Monica Playhouse who were doing this big fringe festival. They put me on 18 Minutes of Fame. And not only did it get well received, and there were about 80 people, Judy, but because I'm blind, I didn't know how many people there were. I don't wear my glasses when I sing. So they signed me right away to come back and do the show on the main stage where you're going to be doing your show. So I just couldn't get over it. So I was in la la heaven. So, but I've always wanted to come back to New York and do the show, not at Don't Tell Mama, which I do love, and not at the Triad, which I do love, but a real theater, because I wanted to have a completion, so to speak, of the first big Broadway show that I was in that unfortunately opened the night Martin Luther King was killed. So there wasn't much of a future with that show. And I ran away to LA and met my husband and got married and had kids and grandmother and all the wonderful things. So, okay. So I wanted to go back and do a show and enter Richard. And I said, I want to do it at the York. Why the York? Because I had met Jim Morgan many, many times talking about my journey with the show. And he finally said to me, he's the director, artistic director. He said to me, Barbara, you cannot do your show with a negative title. You should do your show with a positive title. And when you do it, let me know. We're going to bring you back. Now, that was 5 years ago. Okay. Took me 5 years to pull this off. So I left New York and I said, well, it's got to be positive. And I'm driving and I said, well, I did have 15 minutes of fame, I guess. Oh, that's it. 18 minutes of fame. Because 18 in Hebrew means life.
Right.
That's it. It's been a wonderful life. 18 minutes. As soon as I told Jim, he said, we're going to be doing it. Of course, it took me 5 years to pull it off. And how did I pull it off? And I'll say this very fast because it's a story. He was doing this past summer a show that Oscar Brand wrote. Now, Oscar Brand is no longer with us, but he also was the lyricist, co-lyricist for the Education of Hyman Kaplan, that Broadway show that I did. So I have lots of stories about Oscar Brand and George Abbott, who directed the show, and Tom Bosley, who was the star with me. And I said, I pitched it. And I came in specially, and I met Richard and Danny afterwards, and I told him I just pitched it. And I told him I had all sorts of stories, which I didn't have. I mean, I had the stories, but they weren't in the show. So Jim said, you're on. We're doing it. You send me the script with all the stories about George Abbott and Oscar Brand, and we're doing it when I do this show when we're dark. There'll be 5 shows that you can do. Whew! I said, okay. And I brought in my own director, Susan, my musical director, Ron, the person that I love to do stage managing, Lisa, and my wonderful guy that does sound and film. His name is David Johnson. And I said, I'll go through all these people. And then I find out that Ron can only do 2 shows. It was set for 5.
Wow.
So, God works in strange ways. I said, Barbara, 2 isn't bad. 5 is better. But 2 isn't bad. So I agreed to do the shows when Ron could come in from his other job that he was doing. And it was a wonderful experience for me. And Richard was there. I even got 2 reviews.
Yeah. Raids.
Shows.
Yes. Well, I want to bring John on in just a second. I can actually see him, and that's a good thing. So, but before I do, pull your question from column A or column B.
Even though I am a B in marriage, I want an A.
Anything you want to say or ask before we ask this question and move on?
I want an A.
You want to? I was going to make a comment. When I was doing one of the news things that I did was something called Satellite News Channel, and I was the West Coast anchor and producer for that. And our slogan was, give me 18 minutes and I'll give you the world.
I love that.
So I have a little hourglass that is exactly 18 minutes.
Oh, see?
That's wonderful, Judy.
So Barbara, your question is, what's getting in the way of you being exactly who you want to be, if anything?
Nothing.
Perfect. Perfect answer. And I'll tell you someone else that nothing is getting in the way for this man, and that's John Fisher. I want to know, John, first of all, before we begin, when do you breathe? When do you sleep? Because it seems to me that either you're on stage or you're writing a show. I mean, how many shows have you written so far?
Too many, in many people's opinion. I think of it as one show. It just keeps going. I just started writing it and it hasn't stopped. So I just keep writing, and then I kind of tear off the top 40 pages and perform it, and then I keep writing. So, but I'm a big sleeper. I believe in sleep. I think sleep is the key. So I do sleep, Richard. I do sleep.
Well, let me ask you, because I know that during the pandemic, you did so many virtual shows.
That's right.
Presenting to everyone.
Yeah.
And also, you have, several theaters here in New York that have opened the doors for you. And it seems like it's like this treadmill that you're on. What is your inspiration and what keeps you going?
Well, it is a treadmill. I'm a rat. I'm a rat. I'm a hamster. I'm a hamster stuck on my treadmill. And the pandemic was very scary for me because I have to go places and I couldn't. So I just did the shows on Zoom, and I'd never been on Zoom before. You see how challenged I am just getting onto your program. It was like, Judy said, phone, her choice. Yeah, absolutely right, Judy, because the computer is useless. This computer is useless. I am on my phone right now. Do you know what the computer is doing? It is holding up my phone. That is all it is doing. And that's the perfect metaphor for where we are right now. The computers are useless. Throw them away. They're useless. Everything happens on the phone. And so I went on Zoom and I did 62 shows, which is exactly how long the pandemic lasted for people in my age group. That's when I could get zapped. And 62 shows is 62 weeks. And I ended up with all this material. And then I just started doing it in New York live. So the problem is now you can't do anything live. You have to do it also on Zoom. So you're like acting and you're on Zoom and you're acting on Zoom. And then it's all of a sudden you're in the middle of a show and somebody says, the tech person goes, oh, we have to stop. We've fallen off of Zoom. It's like, what? The show must go on? No, it mustn't because Zoom disconnected. So then you have to wait. But I actually love Zoom. I think it's terrific. And I've always had too much energy. I've been compared to people's 8-year-old grandchild, and I don't have any grandchildren, so I get to be my own. And I just bang them out. I have all these stories to tell and all this fun I want to have. And I feel like if I don't work up a sweat, I'm not acting. I always tell other actors, if you're not about to have a heart attack at the end of Act 1, you're not giving a good performance. So I just feel like, it's just like my heart's beating too fast.
I want to ask you, in this world, I am just it's been 13 years since I've been on the road. And I'm just starting to get out there and do this again. Yeah. I mean, I was doing shows here in New York and doing that thing, but getting on the road, do you enjoy the travel aspect of it?
Oh yeah, I'm so critical of junky movies. I think junky movies are terrible. But get me on a plane and I watch the worst. It's because it's like an excuse, right? It's like this doesn't really count, this flight. And so I'll just watch these horrible movies. I mean, terrible. And they inspire me. It's sick. It's really, people are like, how did you come up with that? It was so sophisticated. It was so deep. And I'm like, no, I just stole it from some junky movie I saw on plane. It's like everybody I know is like, they're not sick of planes. They're sick of airports. Right. So I think if we can just eliminate airports, everybody will love the road again, right? It's just the airport. But even then, I eat junk food that I would never eat. It's like entering America, right?
I love that. But you have a show tonight.
Yeah, I'm doing a show, a solo piece that I created. I create the shows in a week, and which gives you a lot of excuses if people don't like it. But usually I get them pretty tight in a week, and I have notes. I have an outline, but I've run it so many times that sometimes I don't even need my outline. Yeah, so I'm doing a show tonight about Roger Casement, a very interesting person.
And that's in San Francisco.
It's in San Francisco, yeah. So it'll be live and on Zoom, which means that, when we disconnect, I'll have to make up jokes until we reconnect. But that fosters my improvisational skills.
And who is Roger Casement? For those of us who don't.
Roger Casement's fascinating. There's no reason people should know him. He was a fighter for Ireland's liberty, and he was a knight of the British Empire. And when they found out he was fighting for Ireland, they hung him. They strung him up. And the way they were able to do this, because he was such a hero, they would never have gotten away with it. They found a diary of his, which recorded his really naughty sex life. He had a very naughty sex life, and it was like Oscar Wilde. They strung him up for his sex life, not because of his politics, because the people would never turn against him. He was a hero. He had saved people in the Congo. He'd saved people in Peru from exploitation. And when they found out he was an Irish nationalist, and the only way they could do it is, go after his character. Go after his character, which we're still doing. It's ridiculous. It's like, what's the real crime? Oh, there's no crime. We just should hate this person. So he's a fascinating character. He's a very charming man.
So for those who are watching now live, Yeah, you're a theater rhinoceros tonight.
Yeah.
And then to get to the Zoom, will you send me the link so that people will
Yeah.
be able to log on?
Yeah.
And after the fact tonight, is this available as an archived show? Or
Yeah, it's recorded.
Okay.
And I'm even used to hearing myself, on Zoom with that bizarre echo. But so there's that little echo. But I bounce around too much. That's the problem. I've got this head mic, but I'm always bouncing around. So the recordings are pretty good, though. We've gotten better at it. And so yeah, my stuff is out there.
Great. So go ahead.
How did you find that character that you're doing tonight? Did you just research it, or came to you?
Yeah, the amazing thing is now people come up to me after my shows and they say, you should do a show about Roger Casement. It's like, I don't even have to have ideas anymore. They just like, people are, you did the da-da-da. I feel like Steven Spielberg, he just like waits around for ideas to be presented to him, right? And this was an idea from somebody who saw a previous show.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's all they did. They said the name, and then I looked it up and I said, oh, this is perfect for me. Persecution complex, paranoid, freedom fighter, naughty sex life. This is perfect.
So we're gonna have a little round robin type of a thing with about creativity. You've done this before, but before we do, column A or column B?
Column A.
And your question is, and I can't believe I just pulled this. I don't know if you can see this. Here it is. Have you had your 15 minutes of fame yet? Let's rephrase that. Have you had your 18 minutes of fame yet?
I was going to say, you have upped it. It is 18. No. Yes. No, I haven't. No, damn it. That's why I'm the treadmill. I haven't had my 2. Listen, and I don't think any of us should settle for 18, right? With all the platforms out there, we should all have infinite fame. Is that what the new world is about? There are plenty of people out there who want to be audiences. Please let them be an audience, right?
I don't know if you heard about this, and I don't know what museum it is. This guy was just fired. He was a maintenance man at a museum, and he went in over the weekend and put all of his own artwork on the walls.
I love it.
I read about that. Yes.
Yes. And
I love it.
They were talking about this on The View this morning. And, and Joey Behar, being the curmudgeon that she is, and I love her dearly, she said, I'm going to go to Bloomingdale's and put a dress on the rack that I've made myself. And they said, do you sew? And she says, no. But Whoopi Goldberg said she thought that this was brilliant. He unfortunately lost his job, but he probably got more fame, his 18 minutes of fame, from doing something so bold than he would have otherwise.
Yes, I'm going to break into a Broadway theater and put on a show. And if it's a hit, are they really going to throw me out? Really? These producers, are they really going to throw me out on the street if it's selling tickets? Come on.
So, John, we've got to find out who this guy is, and that's your next show.
Absolutely. And then he can break in and take over from me halfway through, right? He'll say, no, I'm going to tell my story.
But I'll tell you a funny story. I went to see Fiddler on the Roof, the last Broadway revival with Danny Poston. And there was a woman sitting behind me, and she was singing along to all the songs. So I turned around and I said, excuse me, are you in the union? And she said, what union? I said, Actors Equity. She says, no, I'm not. I said, you can be penalized for singing in a Broadway theater if you're not in the union. And the look on her face, she said, oh my God, thank you for telling me. I had no idea. She didn't make another sound. At the end of the show, she comes up to me and she said, thank you so much.
Oh my God.
Reframing. That is the best.
The next time anything makes
I want to use that from now on.
But I didn't chastise her, and she didn't feel bad. She felt naive about this. So again, these questions are based on my own readings and research about the creative process. And I'll start with you, Jenn. And the question is, what has really energized you when it comes to the creativity of putting this show together that you've just done
I
and
would
that you're
say,
doing again?
yes, I will say what really energized me was my team. Like my music director, who's also my voice teacher, he and I met each other 6 years ago. I was in a show he was MDing, and we just hit it off. And we're both very self-effacing, so we were chatting at the cast party, and neither one of us wanted to. I didn't want to assume he wanted to work with me as a vocalist, and he didn't want to assume I would want to work with him as a music director. So it took us an hour to get that conversation done. But he's been, I've come so far with him, and I absolutely wanted him on stage with me. He's not part of the cabaret community, so this is a new world for him. And then also my guitarist, Lindsay Bernstead. So his name is Aiden Davis, my music director. And then Lindsay Bernstead was my guitarist, and is my guitarist on the show. She was my MD about 4 years ago. I played Donna in Mamma Mia. And so they've become really good supportive friends. And just even coming to them with my ideas, we would have a session, we would have a bottle of wine. We had 2 dogs in the room, which always added a lot of color to the sessions. And we would just sing through a song together, and they would add in harmonies. We would change the arrangement, but doing that with them was so exhilarating that it really kept me going, because every time we hit on something that it was over and we were like, that was really good, it's that much more motivational to do the next one.
Yeah,
That's great.
Yeah.
Barbara, and you probably have already answered this question, but we can elaborate on it even more so. When it comes to your show, 18 Minutes of Fame, who are the anchors that keep you grounded and keep you on track and on course with what you're doing?
Well, I think to know the line of the show, first of all, that's my responsibility. And to know that, as Jenn just mentioned, the people with me, have my front. Because when they didn't want, the director didn't want to tell me the night you came to the show, Richard, at the York, that they couldn't get the films up, and until just 5 minutes before the show, I never knew, and I didn't pick up that Susan, the director, was so upset, and Lisa couldn't look at me and the stage, and I just did, I just went on, and everything was great until after the show, and they told me. So sometimes knowing is great, and sometimes not knowing, and trusting the process, so to speak.
But it all worked out in the long run, so that was good.
It was a wonderful experience. I'll tell one real quick story. I forgot a part of the show. It wasn't the night you were there. It was the
night I was there.
I forgot part of the show.
No, I mentioned this because, if you excuse me for interrupting, Barbara came to me and told me that she had forgot, but she went back. Excuse me, Barbara, but I thought that it was part of the show.
So did everybody else. I completely forgot the story. One of the stories about Tom Bosley with Oscar Brand, and I went, and I was already on to the next part of the show, which was that I was going to be singing at the Greek Theater with Don Ho in LA. And then I went, oh, wait a minute. I forgot to tell you this, what happened. And I have to do it because Tom's probably watching right now. And then I went back, and God bless Ron Barnett, my musical director, who's connected to my hip, just went right with it. And no one knew that I went back.
No, it perfectly worked. I'm going to mention a book that I'm reading, and it's called You Were Born Rich. And it's by a man named Bob Proctor. And I mention this because I'm working with a career coach now, and her training is based on the workings of Bob Proctor. And he talks about these terror barriers that we create. They're mostly imagined. And the thing is to get through those terror barriers, to get through whatever it is, that fear that's holding us back. And John, in this business, whether it comes to your art or whether it goes to getting your art out to a larger audience, are there particular terror barriers that you feel that you were constantly coming up against in your career?
Yes, constantly. Fear of asking for opportunities, fear of presenting myself. It's so funny. I went to the Roundabout Theater Company's offices, not the theater, their offices. I went in and said, I'd like to meet Todd Haynes. This is before he died, obviously. And they were like, why? Who are you? I mean, it was like nobody had ever done this. And sure enough, there I was talking to him and telling him to come see me at Pangea. And I was just like, what, what do they think I'm going to do? Like attack him? I mean, it was just, the whole process was just sort of like, oh, you've just come by. Okay, well, why don't you sit down? And then he was on his way somewhere else, and I introduced myself and invited, and we had this delightful conversation. And it was all just like, you can't do that. If you ask anybody in New York, it's like, oh, don't do that.
I know.
Don't go to the theater and ask to speak to the artistic. Oh, don't do that. I'm like, well, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to tell you to leave? I mean, what are they going to do? Hit you? I always say to people, it's like, well, I said, well, what are you afraid of? You're going to get hit?
Mhm.
I've never been hit. What's Todd Haynes going to hit me? I mean, what why would he? I mean, it's just, he's got better things to do than hit me. I mean, so sticks and stones, that's the, but words, it's fear of rejection. But I mean, there's been so much rejection already. It's like, I know how to deal with that. And oddly, sometimes people say, oh yeah, I'll come. Of course, I'd love to. And, sometimes they actually do come. But I think that people get kind of a kick out of you just sort of being there in front of them. And that's my anxiety, is that I'm going to throw myself at somebody and they're going to not like me, or they're not going to talk to me, or they're not even going to look at me. And usually they're like, oh, okay, why not? I spent my whole day on a computer. I spent my whole day on Zoom. Here's somebody not on Zoom.
I'll share a story with you. I have been trying for years to get Joanne Worley to do an interview with her, to do anything with her, and I have been turned down over and over and over again. And so there was a Billy Barnes event that took place this weekend, and one of the producers reached out to me and said, would you be interested in interviewing her? And I said, yes, but she won't do it. She's just not going to do this. And then the publicist, who's now my publicist for my show out there, said it's a shame that it's not a live event. And then I thought, I'm coming to town to do a live event. Would she come on stage and be my guest on the show that way? And he said, well, write a pitch, send it to her, and we'll see. And she called me immediately. And she says, yes, Skipper, I'll do this. And this is after years and years and years. I am seeing that I have, talk about computers, I have a keyboard, and it says that my battery is low. So for any reason we end this abruptly, that's what happened today. So I'm just letting you know that, but hopefully that's not going to happen.
Plug it in, Richard.
Was that?
I said, plug it in.
No, well, I don't know what to do with this right now, but hopefully we're going to,
Brilliant, Judy.
15 minutes ago, we're going to make it. I'm holding on to that. Judy, I want to ask you, when it comes to your own terror barriers, you just did this talk yourself. Where do you find your wisdom when it comes to dealing with the terror barriers in your life?
Well, I have a great story to tell you actually around that, because people were, when I told, this was one of the stories I told was how I got my first job in television news. And people were shocked because I just, as John said, I just did it. I didn't think about, what's the worst that could happen? Exactly. They say no. Okay, fine. They say no. So I was 20 years old. I had just graduated Cornell. I graduated early, and I decided I was going to go into TV news because I was criticizing the news one night, and when my roommate said, if it's so damn awful, do it better. And I said, okay, I will. Right. So I'm walking down the street down 3rd Avenue in New York City. Nobody told me you don't start in the #1 market in the country. And I saw Metromedia's New York headquarters, WNEW Channel 5 in New York. Just happened to walk past it. So on a whim, I called up, found out the name of the news director. It was Ted Kavanaugh. Figured, He's a big shot. Probably secretary goes out to lunch first. He goes out a little later, went home, got changed, and came back again, timed it, walked into Metro Media's New York headquarters, this gigantic building in New York, and said to the receptionist, "Tell Ted Kavanaugh Judy Blume is here to see him." She called upstairs. Sure enough, secretary had gone out to lunch. He figured he must have had an appointment with me. She forgot to tell him.
I love this.
Said, "Send her up," right? So I walk in and he looks at me. No, I was 20 and I looked 16 at the time, right? I walk in and he looks at me and he just kind of goes, "Can I help you?" And I said, "Yeah, you can give me a job." And he laughed and he said, "Well, sit down." And I sat down and we talked for about an hour. And at the end of the hour, he looked at me, he said, "Judy, I don't have any jobs for you." He said, "But if you got in here to see me, you probably have what it takes to become a good reporter." He said, "Tell you what, you want to work 1 day a week, Sundays only as a production assistant, go for this, go for that, right? You're hired." And
Wow.
that was my foot in the door.
What a
Wow,
wonderful-
what a
Great story. Yeah.
the whole
love
whole persona today is feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yes, that's
Right.
I remind myself of that all the time because my initial reaction is always like, "Oh God," and then you got to push through.
Yeah, you just got to do it. Exactly.
Right. That's a great
Wonderful. What a great story. And thanks for sharing that. Jen, for you, what was the best question that you have ever asked when it comes to your work that has propelled you forward?
What have you got to lose?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think in general, what have you got to, because in most cases, especially if we're talking about performing, whatever, yeah, maybe a little bit of my dignity, but I lost that years ago. So yeah, I think what have when often it's my friends doing that, but I'll be talking myself in and out of things and chatting with them and just really, what have you got to lose? And my answer, and that's kind of where my friend and I, his name is Tom Olori, he's from Rockland. He and I started a production company 20 years ago, just so we would have an LLC to just be able to put things together when we wanted to. And through the years, we've done plays, cabarets, just using that LLC because we got tired of getting rejected or not having the right look or type for an audition. So with that, when you're doing it yourself, that matters less. So just do it yourself, because what have you got to lose?
That's wonderful. I'm going to share a story, and that's going to lead me to my question for you, Barbara. When I was 21, I was cast in a stock company of The Diary of Anne Frank, a role that I would never in today's world get. But I played Peter Van Damme. And we opened at the Heritage Playhouse in Hopkinton, Rhode Island. And one night we did the show with two people in the audience, and they both turned out to be critics. And one critic, we called him the Utter critic because his name was Robert Utter. And Robert Utter said that I did more facial mugging in one scene than Carol Burnett did in her entire career. And the other critic said that it was the most beautiful portrayal of a young man into adulthood that he'd ever seen on film or stage. So my question to you, Barbara, is, if any, what is the worst review that you ever got that you believed? And what was the best review that you ever got that you believed?
Wow. Okay. I don't remember the worst review, and I should.
Why? No, I'm glad you don't.
I do remember that I was disappointed when I did Rondelay off Broadway, and it was such a beautiful show. It was based on Laurent, the French story, and it was a great cast. But the review is Barbara Minkus is a Jewish doll. I don't know. I was very so I never forgot that it was just inappropriate. It was a French musical, not the Jewish doll.
Okay.
The best review I ever got, I think these last two shows.
Yes.
Because I had a journey of being honest and real on stage.
And it's also a culmination of your life's work.
Yeah. And
Right.
but to also just tell the story as truthful as and sing the song as truthful as I can. And I just finished real quick The Wedding Singer. I always wanted to play the dirty grandmother, Rosie, and I loved it. I loved it. And talk about forgetting a line. I forgot a line because it was a book. It was a show you do like encores where it's the script, but I don't like looking down. You know, just trying to think I could know the whole thing without looking down. And so I forgot one of the lines, and I looked at the audience and I just said, well, you know what I mean.
And it got a laugh.
Down the house. So I do like telling the truth, whatever that truth is of that moment.
That's great.
Yeah.
John, tell us about a performance that captured your imagination as a kid.
Oh, easy. My mommy, when I was a kid, took me to see Yul Brynner and King and I. Okay. I had no idea what a musical was. I had no idea who Yul Brynner was. I was like, what is this? The overture started. I've never been so bored in my life. I was like falling asleep. And she was like slamming me with her elbow. Like, do you know how much these tickets cost? Wake up. These tickets cost a lot of money and you're going to have a good time. And then this woman came out and started singing with this little boy. And I was like, could this be more hideous? Right? It was like horrible. And then this guy came on, never seen before in my life, bald, mid-50s, no shirt. I was like, what the hell's this? The audience went crazy. No matter what he said, they laughed their heads off. When he sang, they cheered. It was the phenomenon that got me. I was like, wow. I'd always seen movies and TV, right? And here was this dude who, anytime he stepped on stage, the audience went crazy. It was like fascism. I mean, it was scary. I mean, it was almost like a fascistic thing. Like the control. If he had told us to invade Poland, we would have done it, right? It was that frightening. But I'm being silly. It was mostly just exhilarating, and I was like, wow, this is theater. That was my theater experience. And ever since then, I've wanted to be in the theater, on stage, in the audience, on stage. And, and I was like, wow, this is, and when people talk about, oh, theater's like this, and it's like this mystical explanation of what it is, it's like, no, it's that audience. It's the audience. It's the audience having fun. That's right. Mm-hmm. And easy breezy. I mean, for this, I will adore my mother and her memory till the end of her life, just because she knew what I needed to see. Then the second show she took me to was Robert Preston in Sly Fox. Wow. It was like the exact same experience all over again. I'm like, who's this guy? And the audience went crazy. I was like, who are these people? Right?
Well, I want to talk about currently. And we're going to go around, and I want to do this quickly, and then I'm going to give everybody a chance to have their final word, which I'll talk about in a moment. But just very quickly, everybody, and I'll start with you, Judy, a performance that you've seen within the last week that really made an impact on you. It could be on television, it could be a movie, it could be on stage, just a performance that you saw in the past week.
Yeah, let me think for a second here. What did I see this past week?
Or I'll make it easier for you recently.
The Regime. Have any of you seen that yet? With Kate Winslet? It's on.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a really weird story. I mean, just this really weird story about this female dictator, essentially, who rules this tiny little country in Europe that is strategically important to China and the U.S. And it's a dark comedy, right? Black comedy. But her performance in it is astounding. And the range that she has was just phenomenal. So the series itself is really weird, but it's sort of mesmerizing because of her performance.
That's wonderful. Jenn?
I mean, I was at Don't Tell Mamas and I saw John Yasser, who was one of the contestants from the Next Big Act last year, and he tells his story of sort of immigrating here from Turkey, and I was hugely moved. He's got a beautiful voice, a great storyteller. He also sang "Kiss Today Goodbye," which I hadn't heard since I had to put my cat to sleep, and that was a song I spontaneously sang to him while it was going on, and I
sleep last week.
Started crying, and like I have never cried in public like I did.
Wow.
That when I saw that, it was a wonderful show. I highly recommend it.
That's great. Barbara?
Well, I'm going to talk about a book.
That's okay.
Okay. Now, I'm a terrible reader. I have dyslexia. It takes me forever to read a book. And my husband brought home a book from the library, Beverly Hills Library. And the name of the book is called The Jew Store. And it is the most touching book I have ever read. It helps that my grandfather came from Lithuania and opened a little store in northern Michigan, and it was called The Jew Store. And that my father brought my grandfather's store to Chicago, and big department store, Leslie's department store. So I didn't know when I opened the book that it was going to touch me so deeply. It's a wonderful, wonderful story about a family moving to Tennessee, and they were the only Jewish people in the.
Wow.
I recommend this. All I've been doing is telling people, read it. It's the daughter that writes it. They had 3 kids. And it's just the most, I was crying and laughing and remembering. I mean, it was just brought out everything. Yeah. So I just finished.
I'll definitely check that out. John?
I'm incredibly cheap, so I only watch stuff that is on free platforms online. And I watched The Entertainer with Laurence Olivier.
Oh my God, I love that movie.
This old movie. And I was like, it was pitiful. His performance is pitiful. It is like he will not stop. He is such a third-rate performer in this movie. The character, and he won't stop. He will not stop because, I don't know, I guess he believes in himself, but I don't know. And it was like, Laurence Olivier, he's so like fancy pants, Hamlet and King Lear, it's like he's got this hoity-toity reputation, right? And this is where he just like drags himself down and plays the most pathetic non-Laurence Olivier character. And it's heartbreaking. It's pathetic. It's almost like one of those movies where you can't look away, but you want to because it's so embarrassing. And I just felt, he talked about performing for 2 people in the audience, and he, that's his audience. And it was just, as a performer, it was like, it was so horribly depressing. I keep thinking about it. I was like, oh my God. Is that me? Is that where I'll end up? Is that, but he just channeled all that stuff, all of his anxieties, all of his terror we talked about, all of it. And he put it into this performance. Apparently he was like outrageously insecure. If you read his autobiography.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he suffered stage fright. And,
horrible stage
and
fright.
he didn't perform for years because
horrible.
of that. How are we doing with you, Barbara, by the way?
I really appreciate you saying that. And I want to tell everyone here, I just loved being with you all. And I hope to see your show, John, and your show, Jen. And I always love seeing you, Judy. And of course, I'm going to see your show, Richard. But I have to go to see a doctor. I'm well. But we don't monkey around with doctors.
Go to the doctor.
I have to leave you now, and I appreciate you asking me.
I'm going to take you off, and then I'm going to say something that I just saw recently, and then we're going to give each of you a chance to have your final words.
And you'll share with me later what you saw.
I will.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. I enjoyed this so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
So I have a smart TV, and I've been watching these old YouTube interviews on my television. And last night I watched an interview with Rip Taylor, and he was brutally honest. And this was in the mid-90s about how difficult his career has been because I mean, you create a persona for yourself, and then people think you can't do anything else, that's it.
Yep.
And he told this story that, he was a regular, which I did not know until watching this interview last night, that he was a regular on the Jackie Gleason show. And he came out and laugh after laugh after laugh. The audiences loved him. He started getting recognized, and he did the show one night, and the audience is howling and everything. And he played this crying character, and he put his head on Jackie Gleason's shoulder, and the audience went crazy. He walked off the stage with Jackie Gleason, and he said, "That is the best performance that I've ever had with this." And Jackie Gleason said, "You're right, but you're fired." And he fired him. Do you know the story, Jen?
No, but it sounds like other stories I've heard about
Yeah.
Jackie. He
Yes.
didn't like to compete. He didn't like people to be better than him.
Well, Jackie Gleason said, "You touched me."
Oh, okay.
And I didn't like that. And Jackie Gleason fired him. Years later, after he had gotten a name for himself, he met Jackie Gleason something, and Jackie Gleason did not remember that. And he said, "I was in a drunken blackout for most of my career, and I don't remember this at all." But I mean, these interviews are so incredible. Go and learn from these people
Yeah.
because their stories, and the thing, and Turner Classic Movies has been celebrating MGM, and there's a great documentary that they've been showing called When the Line Roars. And when Norma Shearer and Joan Crawford and Louise Reiner and all of these great stars that were part of MGM, when their contracts were over, they were just unceremoniously let go from the studios, and with no fanfare, nothing, after making millions of dollars for the studio over the years. So, the thing that I want everyone to come away with from today's show is to take chances. Go through those terror barriers and get out there and do this. Life is short, and while you're thinking about whether I should do this or whether I shouldn't do this, there's somebody out there who's doing it. So just push through it, get out there and do what you need to do to make sure that your career stays on track. And with that, I'm going to leave the screen. Jen, I'm going to turn it over to you. And when you finish, turn it over to John and Judy. You'll have the final word today. Everyone, thank you for being here, and go out and see a live show. Thank you. Jen, it's all yours.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you really for having me. My show is coming up on May 12th at Don't Tell Mamas at 4 o'clock and June 29th at 7 p.m. Don't Tell Mamas, So Please. It's the story of my father and his pizza bagel lifetime, and also, his family connection. So it's a good time.
Great. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you.
John?
It's been great being here. Thanks for having me. It's such a pleasure always. I have my solo performances, which are weekly. The most recent one is Casement, and you can find out about that at therhino.org, THERHINO.org. Theater Rhinoceros' website. They produce it. And I also have my show Medea the Musical, which is coming up in New York this summer. It was a big hit at Green 42 at December, so it'll be around in New York City this summer. Thank you so much for having me here. Richard and Judy, you're both inspirations, and it's been terrific as always. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Take care, John. So what are we talking about today? What we're talking about is overcoming your fears and seeing them really more as challenges. That's how I look at it. And challenges make life interesting, right? So overcoming those challenges is what makes life meaningful. So do what you can to make your life more meaningful. Make it authentic. That's a daily practice. Just let go of who you think you're supposed to be, embrace who you are, and go out and do what you need to do to get your life to run the way you want it to. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you in 2 weeks.